Hello, everyone. Adrian Groenewald, Me Vision Academy. What a privilege to be with you to talk about purpose with someone. We're on sacred ground when you talk to someone about their purpose in life. Why are they on this planet? Why were they born, in a sense? It really is sacred ground, and it's a privilege for me to go to the length and breadth of this planet and to mobilize purpose-driven individuals, those who have found their purpose on every continent, in fact, every country, every sector, and also on all levels of sectors. So it's great to be here. That is why we're doing it. We believe that when someone finds their purpose, they take their life to another level and they make a much bigger difference in the world, to their audience, in their own lives, and something happens. But we're trying to find those who have found their purpose. And today we have a special guest. She has found her purpose. Mandisa Seleoane, she's founder of iKamva Solutions, and she has a corporate background as an executive in the HR space. And it's wonderful to have her with us. Mandisa, welcome. And why is purpose so important?
Thank you, Adrian, for having me. And I think you said it, for some of the reasons I like purpose-driven people is that, for one, they tend to achieve their goals, right? If you look at the proportion of people, if we had a population of people and we divided them into those that have attained their goals and those that have not, I think you will find that the goal achievers are primarily in the group of those that are purpose-driven, right? And that doesn't happen by accident, Adrian. My view is that they do so because, first of all, they are self-propelling, right? You never have to fuel them in any way. You don't have to sell anything to them. They are very willing to engage their resources in anything that they've decided to expend their time and effort on. And that's my primary reason why I like them. They also tend to be a lot more focused than people that are without purpose. And what I mean by that is that their level of commitment to their goal achievement is relatively high. They overcome obstacles, and we all know that we're going to encounter obstacles, we're going to encounter challenges, we're going to see problems. Nobody, can say that I've achieved A, B, or C, and that it's been a problem-free, smooth ride, at least not in every instance, right? At some point, you're going to encounter challenges, and purpose-driven people don't see that as a terminal thing. They see those things as exactly that, and they find ways of navigating challenges. They find ways of solving problems, and they find solutions. They course correct if they need to, but the bottom line is that they find a way of getting there, which is why part of the reason I've stated in my first reason is that they attain their goals a lot more. There's, just to make it holistic as well, I'm going to talk about another element that I like them. And I'm going to borrow from Viktor Frankl, the founder of logotherapy, who was also a Holocaust survivor, where he says, I'm going to butcher it, I'm sure, but just to paraphrase it, that purpose is the reason that people find mental well-being. It's the cornerstone of mental well-being, right? And that doesn't mean they don't experience challenges in the area of well-being. I'm sure that they do. However, it's that drive, it's that meaning, it's that thing that's bigger than them. And we all know, if you've read his books around that part, he attributes his ability to survive the Holocaust, despite the very hard circumstances that he found himself in, to the fact that he had to look inside and he was driven by purpose and he was driven by the need to survive.
What I find fascinating as you were speaking is the thought that one would assume, and I think it's true, that every leader would like a bunch of purpose-driven individuals working for them. And every person would like a purpose-driven leader that they work for. I mean, if you're a purpose-driven individual and you work for a boss who doesn't have a purpose, or vice versa, what impact does that have? Obviously, you'll have more resilience to live through it and to confront the issues and so on. But we can't live in a world where everyone, those who work for me and myself, the boss, have their purpose and they've discovered it. But how ideal that would be, I think. Having said that, a purpose-driven person can be very motivated, very energetic, and maybe quite difficult to lead or manage if you yourself don't have your purpose as a leader.
Yeah, I fully agreed. I think purpose really adds immense value, particularly in the space that you are describing, Adrian. And it's also one of my favorite things to have a purpose-driven people, and their purpose needn't be uniform, but if they are driven by something bigger than them, then I do find that they are infinitely more productive and committed to delivering on the objectives. And they're easy to rally around a common purpose in whatever work context you find yourself in. So let's talk about an individual that is purpose-driven but has a leader that's not quite there yet. That can be quite a challenge, but we know that corporates have tended to inflict a lot of leaders with all sorts of maladies on their people. And that has happened for different reasons. I know that it's not just around the purpose thing. Sometimes it's also just the willingness to lead, or even the ability to lead. And I think willingness is more important, because when you have the will, you can kind of find the way in terms of gaining the competence over time. But historically, we know that we find people that are competent at individual contributor roles, and then we promote them to become leaders. And because, mobility upwards in organization tends to be, coupled with that leadership ladder, then people take those jobs, and it's a good thing. It's good for my ego. It's good for my wealth creation, or even just, just growth in income. And where organizations tend to not have alternatives of high earnings, attaining higher earnings without going through the management ladder or the leadership ladder, then you find those things becoming a bit more pervasive. Now, purpose being what it is, it does help a little bit in taming the maladies that come with it. And as you rightfully point out, leaders that don't have a purpose will find it very challenging to lead people in their charge that are purpose-driven. But purpose-driven individuals will also, if I'm consistent with what I started off with, they'll find a way of navigating that. It may not be compelling for them to stay for too long in a context like that, because as you can imagine, it becomes quite energy intensive. But being the problem solvers that they are mission focused, they are purpose driven, so they'll tend to find a way of navigating a leader of that nature and finding and attaching themselves to the one thing maybe that helps them move forward and stay focused on what they're there for around the leader's limitations.
So I find it fascinating. Sometimes you find an organization that says they've discovered their purpose. So we're a purpose-driven organization. I know of a mining company that says mining with purpose. So then you engage the leaders in there, and some of them do have their purpose, but not all the leaders in that company, in that mine, have discovered or found their own purpose. I would think an organization that is truly purpose-driven would want to help their employees discover their own purpose. Do you think?
Yeah, it would actually be a worthwhile investment for them, and just the impact on their culture, Adrian. But it's not for me. I think all I want to do with this is acknowledge that you are quite correct. Not all organizations, and I'm yet to see an organization that doesn't, at least on paper, articulate some kind of purpose for itself. But not all of them invest as much time and effort in ensuring that their leaders, have a purpose, whatever the nature of that purpose. But for me, the more serious, significant consequence is when they don't even bother to put in place mechanisms to ensure that whether they have their own individual purpose or not, that their leaders at least subscribe to the organizational purpose and are holding themselves accountable to delivering in line, to conducting themselves in line with the organizational purpose that has been agreed.
So what is your purpose and how did you discover it?
Okay. My purpose is to be my authentic self in every situation that I find myself in. And I think I discovered it quite by accident. And I call it an accident, not because I was actively seeking to find my purpose. I've actually never been on that kind of drive. I think I'm one of those, I intuitively do what works for me. And I believe that I've lived my purpose because I go with my intuition. I'm drawn towards the things that make sense to me. And how I actually, let me put it like, how I actually articulated my purpose was in conversation. You know, these team building exercises that organizations run where you have to answer some of these questions, and listening to my peers, you know, giving feedback on what they see me as, but also then starting to reflect on, okay, this is how you see me, but how do I see myself, and how does that translate into a purpose? This is how I encountered it.
You're very energetic in a good way. I feel it, see
Thank
it,
you.
I sense it. Have you always been that way, or is it something that, you know, is that just who you are, or is it part of that purpose-driven nature?
Yeah, I've always been like this in terms of my energy levels, and I love energetic people. I love passionate people. In fact, I'll tell you a silly example. There's one organization that I worked for in the past. I've worked for it for 7 days. And when I resigned and they held a farewell for me, I learned through the speeches that people were giving that people actually took bets on how long, when they saw me on day one during my onboarding, they took bets on how long it was going to take me to lose my energy and my smile. And all of them confessed that they all lost the bet, because even as I was leaving at my farewell, I continued to be just as energetic and to laugh as much as I was at the time that I came in.
Well, that's a
That actually also tells the same story that we're talking about here. My character, who I am, is not going to be changed, but I don't allow my circumstances to change the person that I am. My character, who I am at the depth of my being, remains what it is. And yes, I encounter the same old challenges that everyone else does, but I always come back to who I am. You might find me in some, areas being a bit depleted, maybe not as energetic as you're accustomed to experiencing me, but the overall impression that I leave with everybody is one of energy.
Now, tell us energetically how others can find their purpose. What would be your advice?
Okay. So I think the first thing I always recommend to people who ask me that is that they give themselves grace, right? They must go easy on themselves. And the reason I say that is that we've complicated this purpose conversation quite a bit. And it's not the only thing we've complicated. I think life has just gotten so complicated, not by design, but because we, the people living this life, are complicating it. So give yourself grace, give yourself space, be kind to yourself. Part of the reason we are struggling to find our purpose is because we've complicated the purpose conversation, as I said, and that generates a lot of noise that has people questioning themselves, questioning the validity of what they feel, and looking externally to find things that are really not external to them. Purpose can only be something you find inside yourself. Yes, the outside world will give you cues in terms of feedback. However, this is an inside-out job. So take the time, to listen to yourself and shut out the noise. And then listen. The second thing is listen to those small voices that give you feedback. What is it that gives you joy? And move towards the things that make you happy, that are effortless, that give you joy, right? And then move away from the things that cause you angst, that make you anxious, that frustrate you. No, actually, frustration is not one of them, because frustration is just something you have to work out, right? But if things don't make you feel good and they take away your energy, and every time you're engaging with them, then you find yourself depleted, then that's a clue that says move away from that. It's probably not your thing. And then the third thing I say then is, as you listen to that little voice that tells you what to move towards, then act in line with that voice, right? Because as you act, you will encounter, even if you're not deliberately setting out to say, okay, this is my purpose because I'm drawn to it. But as you act and you experience more of it, you end up finding that holistic picture that says, hang on, I'm doing this. Every time I do this and that, here's a common thread that goes through all of those things. And perhaps you come to uncover your purpose in the course of doing that.
So, Mandisa, as we close, we believe that obviously one can go on an intellectual journey to try and think through what your purpose is, okay? My strengths, my weaknesses, my passions, my this, my that. But we believe that it is at least half of it, if not more, is an intuitive element. So intuitively, I must sense what my purpose is. It's almost a spiritual instinct, gut feel. So a lot of people maybe don't find their purpose because they don't know how to think intuitively, or they don't trust their intuition, or they feel about what their purpose is. Just a comment on that?
Yeah, that's kind of saying the same thing I said in my first point, to say, you know, these dialogues become so complicated, and now there's an instruction manual on how to go about it, right? And Adrian tells you his journey to finding his purpose, and Mandisa feels pressurized to say, maybe I must replicate what Adrian does. But you can replicate, you can steal from some of the things that they're doing, but your journey will always be an inside one in terms of this purpose conversation. What fuels you, what drives you, what comes intuitively to you. You're the only person that can actually sense your intuition, that can feel your intuition, nobody else. But it does get complicated because there's so much around. If you want to succeed, here's what you're doing. If you want to find your purpose, here's what you're doing. And we tend to want to do a copy paste rather than say, okay, let me try that. And maybe in doing this, I will find what works for me. But also, even when you experiment with these things, is how do I take this and make it Mandisa? That was Adrian's journey, and I like how it sounded when he articulated it. But how's about I Mandisify it and then see where that takes you?
I remember when I was young, I'd speak to someone who was a policeman or who was a teacher, and those who are passionate about what they're doing, I thought, well, I must become a teacher. I confused their passion and their sense of purpose with I need to find it in my world, not follow their career just because they're so passionate about it and it looks like such an exciting job. I have to go back and find where my excitement and my intuition leads me, and what's my talent and what's my purpose ultimately.
That is so stunning. And that's the thing. And what you need to remind people of when they do that is that they are that passionate, they're coming across like that, you're receiving them like that because they are being true to themselves. They've found their passion. Now, you're not going to be passionate doing what they're doing. You're going to be as passionate as they are, as impactful as they are, when you go inside and you find what it is that you feel as passionately about, that you can stand up and represent publicly as passionately as they've done in their encounter with you.
Yeah. Mandisa Seleoane, founder iKamva Solutions, thank you so much for sharing your energy and your passion and, in fact, your purpose with us, just being who you are, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on your platform. I feel really privileged.